Well, there we have it, guys. My almost complete modified KTM SMC R 690. As you can see, I've got rid of some things here. I'm missing the SAS carbon canister, and we've got the Rottweiler delete and all that stuff. We have the Leovince, whatever you say it, the full system here. Obviously it's just the end pipe, but it makes it a full system because the original one had the catalytic converter in here. But with this video, I want to jump out on the road, show the bike before I did any of this and after, and see if it's actually worth doing any of this. I find it quite hard to find actually decent comparisons of whether it's worth doing it on a 690. Oh, and just one more thing. I have got the KevMod fuel dongle. Shout out to KevMod. That guy is awesome. I'll talk about that a bit more later in the video. That guy has somehow cracked the Euro 5 model, and that is the big one that I wanted to sort, because it's very hard to get a straight answer on the Euro 5 models on how to do it, because it's not as easy as just throwing a power command on the bike. Anyhow, let's jump out on the road, get the first bit out of the way, and I'll show you what it's like before it got modded and talk to you about the things that I want to be noticing. And then we'll swap back over to me riding it when it's like this, and I'll tell you whether or not it's worth doing. And before we go out, let's do a quick sound test. So, on the road, when it comes to the stock side of things, let's just run through it real quick, because obviously the more fun bits coming up. And if you are here just for the performance side of things, you want to see the exhaust and all that stuff, skip to the mark, I'll put some up here. But before you do that, let me just say, I think you should watch this little bit here, because this segment here will be paramount, and I think it will make it a lot more cohesive if you watch the whole video to understand the differences. But for the rest of us, before we get into the old fuel dongle exhaust situation, let's just quickly run over some things that I can compare to, I guess. What a perfect place to start, because I know this bike. Do I want to go left or right? You go, lady. She's thinking, what the hell is this man up to? Basically, this thing runs so lean that I can feel it in first and second gear. Until you get it really going in the RPMs, it's kind of, I wouldn't say bogging down, but you can tell it's lacking a little. It's just starving that little bit too much. And I can feel that mainly when I'm pulling away from junctions like that. That wasn't a good example, but just to give you an idea, when you're pulling away from a standstill, the extra load on the engine, because it's running lean, you kind of have to compensate to have a little bit more throttle, a little more gas. Otherwise the bike will want to bog down and stall. Hopefully adding this fuel dongle will solve the issues of the low RPM fueling, basically. So it should give me a little bit of a smoother roll on, a little bit of evening out on the fuel issues in the lower RPMs, especially at slower speeds. At the end of the day, these are road bikes, so there's going to be times, whether you like it or not, that you'll be stuck behind cars like this. But that's one of the main things I'm going to be looking for. I'm not expecting a huge gain in performance, because not yet am I opening the airbox up and putting a brand new airbox in for more airflow. That will require a full ECU tune, which will come later. We're just doing this for now as a quick, easy fix, just so I can have the exhaust on to cool the bike down, which is another point. We'll get there in a second. But this is just a quick fix without me having to ruin my warranty. That's the goal anyway. And a huge thing to note is that this is a Euro 5 spec bike. So anybody that has an American version that doesn't have the RPM gauge and the gear position gauge, you guys will be on Euro 4, which means you have a different ECU system. So you guys can just run a power commander and things like that. As far as I know, on these, the power commanders do not work due to the closed loop system. That's a whole other aspect. And just quickly, before we jump into the more fun side of the video, I don't want to drag this bit out too long. The second reason I want to do this modification is to see, hopefully, some improvements in the temperature department, because as you guys may or may not know, the catalytic converter is built into the exhaust on this bike. For it to do its job and burn off all those emissions, it needs to rise to a certain temperature to burn off those gases, which means it needs to run super hot. And to get to those temperatures, the bike has to run super lean, tying into the first reason. But yeah, the heat of this thing gets really bad, especially when you're sitting still. There are pictures and reports of this thing. Basically, the header will glow bright red. So I want to see some great improvements there. And just a quick caveat for you guys, if you're looking to do this modification, or if you have an SMC R 690 or anything like that, just beware when you do change anything to do with the airflow, even if it's just the exhaust, just a straight pipe, or if you change the airbox, you do need to do some sort of fueling, because you are going to mess with the air fueling ratio, but it will just make your engine run too hot, which is not good for the longevity of your engine. So with that bit out of the way, let's jump to the fun side of things, and hopefully I can do something cool with the editing process and whack in some sort of flame transition. How about that? Insert flames. Okay guys, so now we're out on it modified, and I'll be honest, the first thing I noticed as soon as I did it, and this is no BS, look at how smooth I can just roll out with the clutch. Whereas before, that would have definitely bogged down. What the hell? All those rags on someone's car. But the point is, before, it was so much more janky to ride at slow speeds, especially pulling away. As I said, I noticed it straight away. It's not a placebo effect, it's actually night and day. So much smoother and so much more. It doesn't have that bogging down effect like it did before, obviously because it was running with a bit more fuel, and that's down to that O2 sensor. Basically, it makes the bike run a little bit richer and compensates for us removing the catalytic converter and that SAS delete. And just before I cut to the faster bits of this video, because I don't want to do it just sitting in traffic, that kind of sucks, I just want to note that the temperature on this bike from a exhaust point of view, the bike is so much cooler. I'm not feeling like I'm sitting on a barbecue. And doing the modifications that I've done and changing that exhaust has made this bike so much cooler to ride. I don't even notice the heat at all. So of course, from a comfortability point of view, that's so much better. But anyway, let's get into the meat and potatoes and just show you the differences. Listen to this thing purr when I get into the RPMs. Jeez, honestly, I did not expect that. It is night and day. After having my first service, I don't know whether it's something to do with KTM and they undo something in the ECU. I don't know, but as soon as I got it back, I'm telling you, this thing woke up completely. Then once I put these mods on the bike, this thing became an animal. I mean, look at it. Just listen to that thing. But let me dive into the mechanics of what I'm feeling a little bit more of. So this bike is a lot more responsive, a lot easier to handle, it's a lot more predictable, whereas before it was very laggy on the throttle. I'm putting that down to the lower RPMs and the fueling. Now it's just instant. If I get on the gas, it just winds up the RPM nice and smoothly. And don't get me wrong, I'm fully aware that a full ECU reflash would be the ideal situation. But if you're someone like me and you want to keep your warranty intact, or if you want to just do it on the cheap, this would be the bare minimum setup. Get that fuel dongle, get an exhaust, and I'd say 99% of your problems will be solved. And adding that Rottweiler SAS delete system, not only does it look a lot cooler, as you can see with the block off plate, and don't quote me on this, but I believe this is what happens, where it was originally adding more fuel into the exhaust for the emission side of things and clearing that out, removing it means that the exhaust system runs a lot cooler in general, because it is not needed to get to that high temperature to burn off those emissions. But the best way I can describe this from before and after, yeah, this thing is quick. But the best way I can describe it in layman's terms is this feels like going from like a Ninja 400 or something to an MT-07. It honestly feels that much night and day. If you are currently riding around on a stock 690, you owe it to yourself and this bike. Don't let Euro 5 ruin it. It just pulls so hard out of the corners. And the only thing that's stopping me from lifting the front wheel up each time is just being a little bit smooth on the roll-on. And no doubt, those of you that are more technical than I am when it comes to those things will be able to wheelie this thing without even trying. And the last thing I just want to add, performance-wise, that I did notice, was the quick shifter. The quick shifter is now buttery smooth. Before I wasn't a fan. It was a bit clunky, it was a bit odd. I'll give you guys an example in a second when I make some space. But before, when I upshifted, if I wasn't fully on the gas, it'd be very clunky. It was almost quicker just to change gear by hand, like manually with the clutch, which was a lot smoother and just better, which kind of defeated the purpose of the quick shifter to me. Comparing it to my MT-09's quick shifter, this thing, trash. But now it's had the fuel dongle and whatnot installed, so much smoother. Now when I downshift, just instant and smooth. And when I go up, butter, absolute butter. That's money, night and day. But I don't know what wizardry Kev over at KevMod has done to this thing. He does do other models, all kinds of bikes. I'm just speaking on this one. I'm sure he has absolutely nailed it on the other ones too. But if you're wondering what to do with your 690 and it's a Euro 5, this is the way, hands down. But honestly, just for this sound alone, I think that deserves a like and subscribe. So if you've got this far through the video and you haven't already done so, hit that like button, hit the subscribe, do me a solid, stick around. You'll be seeing a lot more of this bike on the channel. I will be bringing the MT-09 out as well now that I've spent most of my time running this bike in and getting as many miles as I can. That's why you've seen it a lot. So don't worry, the MT-09 will be featured very soon. Alright Tim, I think that will wrap it up for this one. Let me know what you think. This bike has turned out absolutely insane. There's a few more things I want to do modification wise, more so just on the decal side of things, and I have been approached by a company for some potential parts to review, and if I don't like them I don't have to do a video on them. So if you do see that video, I've obviously hooked up with a good company to do that. So stick around to see what else we do to this bike. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I'll see you guys in the next video. How cool does that look? So as always, stay safe, look after yourselves, and stay shiny side up. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.